Today we have Judy Gammon, is that right? Gammon here to speak with you. She's amazing. Her bio really quick. Judy is an award-winning author and presenter. She co-hosts the nationally syndicated Staying Young show, which is heard coast to coast. She is currently working on her 5th book and enjoys inspiring others to follow their passion today. So yeah, go ahead and welcome her.
Thank you so much for having me here today. How many of you are really excited to understand what passion is? Yes, be passionate about it. Well, today we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about not just what passion is, but when we have passion, what happens to our brain? When we have passion, what happens to our lives? Where do we go? The things that we are able to do because we found what our passion is. So I thought we'd start just by defining passion first. Because if you look at the Webster Dictionary, Merriam-Webster, you look at the definition of passion and you'll find a few very interesting adjectives. You'll find intense, driving, right? Overmastering feeling of conviction. When's the last time you felt that way about something? Has it been a while? Have you ever felt that way about something? I'm going to a few head nods. A strong liking or desire for something. An object of intense interest. So how do we form choices? So when we're really young, we only have a few things to pull our experiences from. So like from this picture here, this young boy is deciding, should I be an architect? Should I be a doctor? Maybe those are the only two things that he's been exposed to. Maybe dad was a doctor and Uncle John was an architect, and he's thinking, I think I should go down one of those paths. But you see, it's limited when we're little because we only have the experiences that we've been exposed to draw from. And as we get a little older, we start saying, oh, wow, there's a whole big world out there. There's all kinds of things that I could do. There's all kinds of jobs I could do, careers, there's different interests, maybe hobbies, but we start to expand our vocabulary, we start to expand our experiences, the things that we have been exposed to, maybe through our parents, maybe through friends and family. And then all of a sudden we start thinking, gosh, what am I passionate about? What is it that I really want to do? And I could almost bet that there's very few people in this room that really already know what their passion is. And you know what? That's okay. You know why that's okay? Because passion takes 3 different things. First of all, it takes something you're talented in. You may not even know what you're talented in yet. Because just because you were good at baseball in high school, or maybe you were on the soccer team, or maybe you're an artist, or you sing well, and you think, oh, I'm talented in that, that must be my passion. Maybe, maybe not. Because it's not just passion, it's also opportunity. And opportunity doesn't always come when you're 19, 20, 21, 22. Sometimes it comes when you're 35. Sometimes it comes when you're 40. And sometimes it comes even after then. So you may be successful in your own right, and you may be doing a lot of great things. You may have a good job, but you might not have found your passion just yet. And then, of course, education. You're here. You're here at the university because you're gathering an education. And maybe what you're learning is what you're going to go into for the rest of your life. And maybe it's not. But maybe it is part of your journey to getting to exactly where you need to be. Maybe it's one of your 3 balls in your funnel that's going to lead to your passion. So this is your brain on passion. So what happens when you're passionate? Well, there was a study, and they looked actually at the brain. Anybody familiar with MRI machines? You know what an MRI is? I see a few hands. So anybody ever heard of functional MRI? Functional MRI? So this is when you can look at the brain, and you can look at it in real time. So a lot of research has been done over the last 5-10 years, I think mostly the last 5 years, using functional MRI. Because they're able to watch the brain at different times. We're able to see what happens when we pray with the brain. what happens when we're sad with the brain, what happens with different emotions with the brain. But what's really interesting about this particular study is they found out what happens to the brain when you're truly passionate about something. So different parts of your brain actually light up and work together. You'll see here behind me, you have the reward system portion of the brain, right? And you also have the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that's responsible for memory, good decision making, and also emotion. So when you're passionate, your amygdala lights up, sends a message to your reward system. It's like a little cycle that goes through. And then what happens? You are motivated. So just because you learn something doesn't mean you'll be motivated to do that thing. Just because you're talented doesn't mean you'll be motivated to do that. Just because someone offers you a job doesn't mean you'll be motivated to take that job. You see, you really need the different parts of your brain working together. And when the different parts of your brain work together, there's a saying, when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And my goal here today is to teach you that you need to find out what your passion is. So you'll never feel like you're working. You'll only feel like you're giving yourself and the world back. So a little minor technicality. It's all great. We talked about the reward system. We talked about the brain, how it works. Well, I hate to tell you this. You can't do any of this without your prefrontal cortex. That's the front part of your brain. It's a great part of your brain. You really need it. But guess what? It doesn't fully develop until you're 25. This is why a lot of people go to school, and they go to school for something that they think, I am going to do this the rest of my life. I want to be a dentist. And then they find out, I don't want to be a dentist. Or I want to be a vet. I don't want to be a vet. They think that they know what they want to do, and they start preparing for what they want to do. And then later, as their brain develops, they think, gosh, you know what? I really like that, but I don't think I'm going to be passionate about that. And sometimes our education, our opportunities, and our talents all collide. And when they all collide, you can find something that uses all of those that you can work towards and you can do. And so, great, now what? What do we do? This is where it gets important. You now, where you are in your life, you need to work on your 3 balls. And this is really important because remember, each of these 3 things go into your passion. So right here, you're in education, right? You're here, you're learning. You need to soak up as much as you can. And don't be stuck in, this is my career path. I should only take classes that fit in this mold. Don't be afraid to step out and sign up for a class that isn't part of your career path, that isn't part of your major. Because you might find out, wow, I really like that. I didn't know I was going to like that, because you haven't been exposed to that yet. Talent. How can you find out what your talent is if you're not doing anything? Sitting in front of the television is not a talent. Social media is not a talent. You need to get out and develop your talent. There are people that learn how to play an instrument later in life. They learn all kinds of skills later. They take an art class and they're like, wow, I had no idea that I could draw or I like to draw. So develop and find your talent. And then opportunity. I dare say that this LEAD program is a terrific opportunity for all of you, because leadership is so important to being successful. It's also important because when you find your passion, you can inspire others to find their passion. You can inspire others that have a similar passion as you so that they can be more successful, that they can help other people. And all of that starts right here in the LEAD program. How many of you are just starting in the LEAD program? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you have been in at least a year? Great. Fantastic. How many of you are in your 2nd year and finishing up? Great. Any alumni? Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. This program, if you are just starting this program, I want to ask you to stick with it. I want to ask you to stick with it for multiple reasons. Because you're building your toolbox, you're learning new skills, you're meeting new people, you're doing things that are going to look good on your resume. So when you go to get a job that you really want, it's on your resume. People look at that. People are interested in that. There are a lot of people out there with degrees that are looking for jobs. And when the person who's going to hire goes down the list, they want to see what else did they do outside of just go get a degree. And when they see something like a leadership program, it puts you to the front of the list. It puts your resume on top of the stack. I encourage you to stick with the program. I want to also set realistic expectations. My husband and I have 10 children between the two of us, and we have one left in high school. Everybody else has been through college. Some have been to Ivy Leagues. A couple have been right here at UVU. One's up in Oklahoma. So we understand, probably more than a lot of parents, what this cycle is. You go to school, you're going to conquer the world, you think you know what you're going to do. We've seen students change majors more than once because as their brain's developing and as their passions are developing, they realize, maybe I didn't want to be an education major. Maybe theater wasn't for me. I think I want to go into medicine. So really understanding that it's okay as you go through this part of your life to grow and to change. That's part of growing up. That's part of becoming an adult. The job market, I really want to stress that. If you think you are going to leave here with your degree and you are going to land the best job ever at the highest pay in the exact field and you're going to work with everybody you ever wanted to work with, I hate to burst your bubble. But that's probably not going to happen. Maybe for one or two of you, but for the majority, that's not the case. But it's okay. I would almost say you're better off if that doesn't happen to you. Relationships, friends and family. When you leave school and you are out on your own and you're in your apartment and maybe you don't have roommates anymore, all of a sudden you're just you and yourself in the mirror, and maybe you have a pet. And you have to say, wow, where are all my friends? You have to make new friends where you go. You're going to be outside of the bubble of school. It's really important that you make friends. And I have this little plaque. I love this plaque. And it says, the first part of being a friend is to show yourself friendly. So you need to be sure that you get out there and you make friends. Where do you make them? Maybe you join a gym. Maybe you take a class, just a talent class. Maybe you do different things, get on a rec league so that you can develop and make friends. Make friends maybe at your church or within your community or wherever it is that you're going to hang out. But do not, again, I stress, do not sit in front of your computer and sit in front of your TV because you will not grow. And then the process. Trust the process. This is a process for all of you. And I cannot stress that enough. It's okay to not get everything right the first time. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to learn new things. It's part of the process. And it's not all about the leap. And I use this photo because I want you to imagine yourself for a minute, right? You graduate college and there's a big river in front of you and you think, I'm going to leap over to adulthood. And you are just going to jump over that river and land on the other side, untouched. It's not going to happen. You have to go over the stepping stones. And there are stepping stones. There are stepping stones, and bless you, no matter where you are, there are stepping stones. And you need to honor those stepping stones. And don't get ahead of yourself. Don't want to rush your life away. It's really important part of the process of growing. So here's an example. First job. Then you got a setback. Maybe you got laid off, maybe you got fired, maybe you hate your boss, maybe whatever. Maybe it's just not really for you. Then, new opportunity. Hey, I think I like this job better. Thanks, God, you did me a favor, right? Then you find a career. You're in a career, but you happen to meet somebody while you're in your career that introduces you to something completely new that you're like, oh my gosh, I could totally get on board with that. That is fantastic. And then you start thinking, I have the talent for that. I think I have an education that will help me get there. And I just got the opportunity. And this is how passion grows. Don't be afraid to fail. Very important. I could probably do 50 slides just like this. You can think of anyone who's successful and they have a failure story. So Oprah. You know, Oprah was an anchor. She was an anchor in Baltimore, and they said she was terrible. They fired her. She had no business being in front of the camera. And now what? She's a billionaire. She owns her own company. She made billions of dollars in front of the camera. So somebody obviously didn't know what they were talking about, but her passion wasn't to be an anchor. Think about it. If she would have stayed as the news anchor, reading out whatever came across that teleprompter, was that who Oprah is? No, that's not who Oprah is. Oprah wants to create. She wants to invite people. She wants to learn things. She wants other people to learn things. It's really important that all of us know that you may be close, but maybe not quite there yet for your passion. Walt Disney, I love this. Walt Disney was an editor, right? He got fired. He lacked creativity. His boss said, you stink. You're terrible. Fired him. I don't think Walt Disney lacks creativity. Walt Disney's creativity just didn't fit within the mold of who he was working for as an editor. Could you imagine if Walt Disney would have stayed as an editor? We'd have nowhere to go to celebrate after you win the Super Bowl. Michael Jordan. I love this story about Michael Jordan because this is exactly how we should all think. How many baskets did he miss? How many games did he lose to make it to where he is? It's okay to miss. It's okay to lose. It's not okay to not show up for the game. It's not okay to not put yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there. You have to try. And sometimes trying means you're not always going to make it. And then what about reinventing, right? Lots of people do this. They reinvent themselves. I've been told, gosh, Mom, you've reinvented yourself a couple times. Because you know what? My passion changes. Anybody in here reinventing themselves? Any yeses? Maybe? I saw one. It's okay to reinvent yourself because maybe you haven't found that three things that goes into the funnel, right? Maybe only 2 of them are there. Maybe all 3 of them are there, but they're not fully developed. Maybe that opportunity and that learning, all of it hasn't come together just right to get you to your passion. Harrison Ford, he was a carpenter. My gosh, could you imagine not having, I'd much rather be entertained by Harrison Ford than have him build me a table. I'm sure he was good at it, but he's really good at what he does now. Brad Pitt, well, Brad Pitt, some guys in here I'm sure would say had a great job because he drove around exotic dancers all day. That was his job. But then he got into acting and he does really well. He also had another job where he actually had to wear a chicken suit. And in his chicken suit, you've seen him on the side of the road, stop here, eat this. And that was what he was doing. He hadn't found his passion yet. He hadn't developed that passion yet. And I love this one, Ellen DeGeneres, she was paralegal. Until she decided, I think I'm funny. And you know what? The world agreed with her. She's funny. It's okay. She didn't find that out until later in life. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the brain, neuroplasticity. Has anybody heard this term, neuroplasticity? Okay, great. See a couple hands. Okay, a long time ago, we thought, and maybe you think because you haven't been introduced to this concept yet, that you're born with all the brain cells you're going to have and they're going to work the way they're going to work, and when you turn 6, everything you ever learned is already in there and your personality's developed and this is the way it's going to be, yada, yada, yada. Well, now we know through functional MRI that that's not true. That every time we learn something new, every time we have a new experience, every time we are in the game, our brain is changing. The synapses, do people know what that is? It's the little things that when your brain's thinking, they start talking to each other, right? And they build and they grow. That's what happens when you get out there, when you're in the game. That's what happens when you're taking a class here at UVU. That's what happens when you're in the lead program and you're performing whatever task they have you performing to move to the next level. That's what happens when you make friends. That's what happens when you take up a new talent. Your brain is growing. Your brain is developing. And you know what? It's a lot easier to find your passion when your brain's highly developed. I want to talk to you for a minute about labels. Anybody had a label put on them in their life? Yeah? Okay. You want to share your label? You don't have to. Well, I can tell you, I had labels put on me. You want to know what they were? This is me at 20. I married, had my first child, had to put college on hold. I'd started. My first husband went off to the Gulf War, and my life changed dramatically. And when I was a kid, my teachers all said I talked too much. Every single report card I have says I talk too much. I also was told I was a slow reader. I was the kid in the class that wanted to vomit if they called on me to read. My hands would turn sweaty. I felt sick. Just don't pick on me. I would count how many paragraphs until they got to me so I could try to practice, and then they'd call on me for some question. I wasn't listening. Anybody think this sounds familiar? Well, I've been there, done that. I was a small town girl. When I was 10 years old, my parents divorced and my mom moved us 1,200 miles to a small town, Texas. Let me tell you, they don't like Yankees. At least they didn't back then. And it was culture shock. It was culture shock. And I talked a little funny because I had this Michigan accent with this small town Texas accent. And every time I went to Michigan to visit my friends, they all said I sounded like a hick. And every time I was in Texas, they all sounded like, you sound like a Yankee. I really wasn't fitting anywhere. And of course, I was blonde. And I know the blonde jokes probably aren't as crazy as they are now, but back in the day, it was all about the blonde jokes. And I caught the brunt of them. I know all of them. Slow reader? Well, here's what happened. My second child ended up having dyslexia. I didn't know what dyslexia was. So I had decided I was going to learn everything there was to learn about dyslexia so that I could help my daughter. And as I sat there in these classes learning about dyslexia, I thought, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. And then what did I do? I went and I hid in my room and in the closet and at the kitchen table when nobody's at home, and I did every exercise they taught my daughter until I could read. Then I decided I was going to go back to school. And I did. I brought a stack of books on the dining room table, and I told my family, I know I've been absent. I know I haven't been around much for a year and a half, and my mom thought I had cancer. She's like, because it's not usual for you to call everyone in your family and say, I have a big announcement, you need to come to dinner, nobody better be late. But then as I carried in these stacks and stacks of books, and I said, I read every one of these books. And I applied to GW, and guess what? I got in because I took enough classes to get my GPA high enough that I could get in. And that's where I got my undergrad degree in health sciences because I knew I loved health. My mom was a nurse. I was always bandaging up my dollies as a kid. I knew I liked it. I didn't have the education. I didn't have the opportunities just yet. But once I learned to read, there was no stopping me. I was like, gosh, if I can read, maybe I can write a book. Maybe I can write another book. Maybe I can write another book. And this kind of went on. And as for talks too much, hey, it can work for your advantage. Trust me, everything they've marked on your report card, I want you to look at it and I want you to say, how can I use that? Yeah, I talk too much, but that's okay because now I get paid to talk too much. And who's got the last laugh now, right? And then, yeah, I'm still blonde. And here's a picture of me when I got my master's degree with several of my kids who are also blonde. And it was such an incredible moment in my life to say, gosh, here's the kid Here's the kid with all the labels. Here's the kid that was a slow reader. Small town. I worked out the accent thing. I don't know, you can tell me afterwards, but I think that I've got one down that doesn't sound too crazy now. It literally is a process. I can't stress the process enough. I'm living proof. The stepping stones for me, there was a lot of them. It was a wide river, trust me. But every single job I had, every single person that I met, every opportunity, every class I took, everything, what happened to my brain? It changed. It grew. It grew more and more every day. And then I was able to find my passion. And now I can do my passion. And I can live my passion. How do you know when you found your passion? You know when you found your passion because you wake up and you want to go do it. You don't wake up and say, "Good Lord, it's morning." You wake up and say, "Good morning, Lord," and you head out the door with a smile on your face. This is so important because that's how you know that you have passion. That's how you know that you love what you do. And it's all about learning to love what you do. It really is. So what will you do? Think for a minute about your life. Think for a minute about all the opportunities that are going to come your way. Think about all the classes you can take at UVU. Think about classes you can take after you're done here. Think about the opportunities in the LEAD program. What about friends you haven't met yet? I'll share one with you because I thought I pretty much was done learning, right? I pretty much had written books, on the radio. I thought I had it all figured out. Until I met my best friend who was just shy of 104 right before she died. And in the 3 years that she and I hung out, I can guarantee my brain grew because she taught me things that I didn't know. She taught me things about life that I wouldn't have ever found out if I wouldn't have met her. And how did I meet her? One day I said, I think I'm going to write a book called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100. Let's see, I need to go find some people that are 100. Who wakes up and says that? But I did. And I learned so much from these people. And maybe the people you're going to learn from aren't going to be 100. Maybe they're going to be people that you meet on your job. Maybe they're going to be people that you meet in church. Maybe they're going to be your neighbor down the street. Maybe they're going to be somebody that you never in your wildest dreams thought you would come across. But I guarantee if you put yourself out there, if you keep learning, if you keep growing, if you fill your funnel, if you grow your brain, you will find your passion. And when you do, there'll be no stopping you. Anything is possible. And as for those labels, just wear them like a bumper sticker. It's okay, because you're going to take every label that was ever put on you, and you're going to do one of two things. You're going to pull it off, scrape it off, or you're going to wear it proudly because you're going to realize that that particular label is not a weakness. That particular label is a strength. And that strength is what's going to make you soar to unbelievable levels. I appreciate you so much for having me today, and I love talking to you students. You've been absolutely fantastic. I'd love to take any questions if you have questions. Yes?
I was just curious if you don't mind sharing, maybe what are some of your passions in life?
Great question. So the question was, what are some of my passions in life? And things that I never thought would be my passion. I love writing. I love to write. I will go to a cafe, I will sit down, put some earplugs on, put some creative, there's all these really cool neuroplasticity CDs and music you can listen to that actually help you think and without distracting you. And I will sit and write for hours. I'll look and I'll go, oh my gosh, I haven't looked up for 3 hours. And I know I like it. I know I'm passionate about it because I didn't notice that I've been sitting there for 3 hours. I also am very passionate about teaching. And I think that there's so much opportunity in the world to teach somebody, to reach out, to help them grow, to use our own experiences and pass it on. And that's a big passion of mine. On the radio, we talk about health and wellness, and we do that because I firmly believe that people would want to be well if they truly understood, not were just told, hey, you need to eat right, hey, you don't smoke, don't drink, but they understood exactly what it means to be well. I think more people would choose that. So sharing and educating, definitely. Thank you so much for the question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You were talking a lot about labels and how you should wear them proudly. How did you wear your labels proudly and overcome them?
Great question. So the question was about labels and how do you wear them proudly or overcome them? I can tell you that being in the small town, I learned a lot. So I don't mind that I grew up in a very small town in Texas because I learned things in that small town. And when people say, oh my gosh, you grew up down there? I'll say, yeah. And I'll share with them the things I learned. I learned how important it is to have friends. I learned how important it is to be in a community. I learned how important it is that you better not do anything wrong because everybody knows your mama. We need a whole lot more of that, trust me. But then, when it comes to dyslexia, finding out I was dyslexic later in life, I remember when I first found out, I didn't want anybody to know. I talked about how I would hide away and I'd do the whole shaving cream exercises and all the different things that I was teaching my daughter and what they were teaching my daughter at the school she was going to. And I decided that, there's probably a lot more people just like me out there that never knew why they didn't want to be called on. They never knew exactly why they hated it. They just knew they hated it. So being able to share that with people, being able to say, hey, maybe you're a slow reader. Maybe there's something else called dyscalculia. I don't have this, but I know people that do. And that's with numbers. So maybe there are people out there that are struggling as adults in school, even in college, that didn't find out in time, and being able to share that experience and tell them it's not too late. Look, I was well into adulthood, motherhood, everything when I found out that that's what I had, and it changed my life. So instead of being shamed by that, embracing it, I think was really big for me. Embracing it and then going out and talking to people. Quick story. I shared this story. Our calling in church was to work with the primary kids. So we had these kids that were 7, 8 years old. And I happened to share this story. And this kid in our class who had been so incredibly disruptive, like you cannot imagine how disruptive this child had been, always. And I was like, I don't want to go to church. I got to deal with him. It was just really one of those kids. And I shared this story, and he started to cry. And he said, Sister Gammon, I think you're talking about me. And I talked to his parents, and he actually got tested. He has dyslexia. And I have these really cool dyslexia glasses. So great invention, by the way. So I brought my dyslexia glasses, and I showed them to him, and I was like, look at these. And we had this incredible bond. He was my best student for the remainder of the time I was in that calling. And it was only because I stepped out of my comfort zone and I shared with these kids that, hey, I didn't always have all the answers. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you were able to find your passion and you excelled in areas in professionalism and other things, but would you say from your personal experience that you've been able to even out, your passion has been able to be evenly distributed in other areas of your life, like being a mother, your callings, other areas besides professionalism, or do you feel like your passion may have robbed you a little bit from those other areas?
Great question. He asked if I make sure I get this right. Has my passion worked? The multiple passions I have, that they work together, or have some overtaken other areas? Is that
right.
Okay? Great question. I can say that I have had times in my life where my life has been out of balance. Because one thing about being passionate about something is you really want to focus on that. You're really into that. You really want to do that. But sometimes life is also there. You have your kids, you have your spouse, you have other things happening. And throughout my career, I mean, when I was in high school, what was frustrating for me is because I really, really wanted to be a pediatric emergency doctor that rode the helicopters. That's all I wanted to do. I mean, that was like, I'm going to do that. But I had one big problem. I was a slow reader. So medical school was not really in the cards for me because nobody knew I was a slow reader. I just was blonde. So that became, okay, what is my passion? So I was going to school and I was just taking some basic pre-med classes. And then my first husband went off to the Gulf War. I stopped going to school. And then later, when I did figure out that I had dyslexia, I went back and got a Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences, which I loved, right? So I'm like, I'm really into this. I really love it. But I wasn't passionate about it because I didn't know exactly how to use it. Like, I'm getting all this great information, but I don't know how to use it. So then as time went on, and I started writing books, I started speaking, I started educating other people, I started working on the radio show. By the way, I co-host that show with 2 MDs. Love it. It's really exciting. We have unbelievable guests on our show. We've had the people that have, George Church from Harvard, and we've had lots of celebrities, but a lot of great, if you don't know who George Church is, he's really involved in the Personal Genome Project. So a lot of things that are cutting edge that I've been able to do that I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined that I'd be having conversations with Suzanne Summers, and I'd be having, all these really cool conversations and all these great learning opportunities. And every time we do a show, I learn something. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you talked a little bit about, inspiring others through teaching.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give us, or especially me, to inspire those who have problems like that, or who haven't found their passion but really have settled for something less? We all have family members or friends who settle on those things that just go, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
seek out their passions because they've consigned themselves to just the daily grind. What advice could you give to us about how to inspire them to seek their passion?
Okay, so the question was, how can you inspire somebody who's settled, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you have someone, maybe it's you, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, I don't know who it is, your best friend. And they have settled because they think, this is what I do, right? They get stuck in that this is what I do. And then they go to work, and then they come home, and then they eat, and then they go to bed, and then they go to work, and then this whole thing goes on, and they get older and older, and they haven't done anything passionate. The number one thing you can do to inspire those people is to lead by example. I don't know how many times I have heard from family members, gosh, I wish I could do that. You can. There's nothing stopping. You can do that. But being that inspiration is the number one way to get them to change their life. Because nobody wants to be preached to. And I will dare say, if you go out and you preach, you better make sure you know what you're talking about, and you better make sure that you're doing exactly what you say, because whoever it is you're preaching to is going to be the first one to call you out. So live by example, and inspire them by speaking words of encouragement. You would be surprised how many people have never been told that they are good looking, that they're loved, that they are good enough, that they are smart enough, that they can do these things. There are so many people in your frame of reference who have never, ever had that. And you can be the first one. And I promise you, when you start being that person that walks up and says, gosh, you know what? I think you're really good at speaking to other people. You should consider being a public speaker. Don't say it unless you mean it. But, find somebody in whatever it is that they could be good at. And even if they don't do that, the thought that you believed in them will change their life. My husband is an MD, and he said, when we got married. You can do anything you want, honey. What do you want to do? That was the most terrifying words to me ever. I'm like, what do you mean I can do anything I want? He goes, you can do it. You're smart. You can do anything you want. I'm like, you think I'm smart? He said, yeah. I think you're pretty too. You think I'm pretty? You think I'm smart and pretty? I mean, it was the first time that I really had ever had those words spoken to me in that way. And suddenly I was like, maybe I can do anything I want. And then every obstacle wasn't so much of an obstacle anymore. It was more of a, I can do it. I just have to figure out how to do it. I mean, I decided I wanted to go back to school. I said, I want to go to GW. I didn't tell anybody but my husband because I thought people were going to laugh at me. And he's like, you could do it. Why don't you find out what it's going to take? So I did. I called and I said, I want to go to this program. I'd like to do this. Well, what do you have? And I said, I'm going to have. And they said, okay, well, here's what's going to take. And so I made a list and I did it. And that's really what anything in life is about. It's about just finding out what it takes to do it and then do it. If you just say, oh my gosh, that's so hard, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do that. You're right. You won't. But if you look at something and you say, oh my gosh, that's so hard, I need to break it down into little bitty pieces, and if I do one little piece at a time, then suddenly I'm going to get really good and I'm going to get better at it and I'm going to get all these things together and I'm going to accomplish it. You're right. You will. I think it was Henry Ford that said that most people think they're wrong every day, most people think they're right every day, and they're both right. Because you wake up and you think you can't do it, you won't. If you wake up and you think you can do it, you will. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you mentioned dyslexia a few times. What exactly is it? I know someone just has a hard time reading, but what is exactly someone's brain doing as they're going through dyslexia? What is happening?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that dyslexia is, you just reverse a letter here and there, right? So it is the way the brain reads and decodes things. So for me, I could look at a paragraph and maybe the things are kind of moving or they look a little different. It's not just about reversing letters. I played an instrument in high school. I wasn't very good at it because I just would literally sit there and listen to it and just play back whatever I heard because I couldn't read music. Because when I looked at music, it was a bunch of dots floating all over these lines and I was like, how does anybody read this stuff? I didn't know how they read it. It didn't make any sense to me. So I would just listen and try to play back. I could never sight read or anything like that. So what happened like with my brain and with the program like that my daughter went through, and lots of kids go through this program, you learn to decode differently. You create muscle memory. So when I talked about the shaving cream, I would take shaving cream and I'd put it all out on a surface and I would write in the shaving cream to create the muscle memory. The back of clipboards, I don't know if they're all like that, but they used to be kind of rough. Some of them are smooth now, but the rough clipboards, I would have one of those and I'd constantly be writing on them because I'm creating muscle memory for the letters. And once I could do that, then I could start to see the letters in a different portion of my brain. It's quite fascinating. I would probably take on dyslexia as a passion. Maybe I will. Maybe that's what I'll do next decade. But I think there's so much to be gained from dyslexics. My daughter, who is dyslexic, she is an incredible artist. And she can build anything. I mean, anything. She sees it in her head and she just builds it. And it's such a gift. It's just different for everybody. But, looking at your issue, and I hate to even use the word issue, but say it's dyslexia or say it's ADD. Anybody in here, you don't have to raise your hands, but I'm sure somebody in here got labeled with ADD. Well, let me tell you, at my job, I'm the Director of Business Development at Executive Medicine of Texas, and we have the C-level executives constantly coming through to see us. They fly in from all over the world. And if I had to put a percentage on how many of those executives are diagnosed ADD, adult ADD, it'd be really high. Because guess what? People with ADD make really good CEOs because they are always thinking about these great ideas and they have people to carry them out. And it really works out well. So these things that seem like they're such a hindrance can really catapult you if you find your passion. You can use those things just like that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-huh.
How do you narrow down your passion? I'm having the hardest time because I have a couple passions and everything. I'm trying to narrow down exactly what I want to do for like a master's program or for my career. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a couple thoughts. I had to make a decision recently, and somebody gave me great advice. And it was just an A or B decision. So if you just had two things you're choosing from, this is great advice. This friend of mine said, take a coin, pick which decisions A and pick which decisions B, and flip a coin. And when it lands, if you go, oh, the other one's the right answer. And I thought, that's the best advice ever. So, but sometimes you're stuck with more than one opportunity or more than one passion. I think it goes back to the funnel. And in the funnel, you really need to know what kind of education do I have that will lead me down a successful path? Or if I don't have that education, can I obtain it? 2, do I have opportunities in that career path or to do that passionate thing I like to do? And then also, all of the things put together. The talent, do you have any natural talent that will make you good at that particular thing? And don't let money be a driver. I know this is going to be so backwards from what you've probably heard a million times. Because if you're passionate about something and you're really good at it and it helps somebody, the money comes. The money comes. But if you ever go into something just because of the money, I want to go be this because it pays a lot of money, it doesn't work. You won't be happy. And then if you're not happy and you're not passionate, you'll be just doing the wake up, go to work, go home, eat dinner, go to bed, wake up, go to work, the same thing. I will say too, when it comes to having multiple passions, if there is something that you can think of that fits your funnel, your 3 things, right? And you can also add a 4th little ball in there, and that is, I wish I could solve this problem for the world. You throw that in, you're going to be right up there with Steve Jobs, with all of these people, because what they did is they found their passion, but they also found a way that they could use their passion to help other people, to solve a problem in the world. And if you can solve a problem and have your passion, that's the best of both worlds. Answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Well, I'd like to thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I really can't say enough about the university and about the LEAD program. Once again, I do want to tell you to stick with it, stick in it, and come back as alumni. Thank you.